We are having today 60 U.S. Government officials, including 2 retiring, and I'm really sorry they're retiring, Senators Lieberman and Kyle. By video, former Secretary of Everything and a good friend of many of us, George Shultz from Stanford. More than 50 members of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives from the Navy, Air Force, Army, and Marine Corps, 88 members of the press, representatives of the State Department, including Ambassador Robert Ford, our talented and I would add very brave U.S. Ambassador to Syria, from the U.S. Department of the Treasury, other officials, but especially the team there that is doing such a great job of fighting terrorism and financing, representatives from the Justice Department, Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and other government agencies, and in many ways, most importantly, dissidents and human rights advocates from Iran, Syria, Iraq, Pakistan, and many other countries. Well, this conference is titled Dictators and Dissidents, and it is asking the question, should the West choose sides? Let me say just a few words about this issue. This is a case-by-case, difficult set of choices. We did a very good job of choosing the Democrats when we sided with Solidarity, for example, during the Cold War. But we picked a far worse ally, but one we had to pick. In the years 1941 to 45, for 3 years and 8 months, we were the close ally of, at that point, history's greatest murderer, Joseph Stalin. We needed him against the Nazis, and we used him, and eventually we defeated his heirs. We have hard choices frequently because it's not always clear what act of the revolution something is in. What I'm talking about is the pattern that was set up years ago by the marvelous historian Crane Brenton in his work on revolutions, Anatomy of a Revolution. Many revolutions go through several stages. And stage 1, act 1, let's call it, tends to be a very happy stage. It's young people in the streets overthrowing the symbols of authoritarianism or worse, the Winter Palace, the Shah leaving Iran, the symbols in revolutionary France of the Bastille, and life seems to be headed in a new and positive direction. And then often there are further positive developments in Act 2. Lafayette and the others who made the French Revolution helping to promote the tennis court oath people, trying to begin a pattern of liberalism and freedom and institutions to support it. The Mensheviks in 1917. The liberals who looked for a few months as if they might run Iran following the toppling of the Shah. And then, particularly when there is substantial stress and difficulty and anger and beginning of use of violence in this period, late in Act 2, we come on Act 3. Act 3 is often very ugly. In Act 3, frequently, those who support totalitarianism being better organized and more brutal, even if a minority, will come to the fore. The Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution, the Reign of Terror, Robespierre and the others in the French Revolution, Khomeini and those around him killing the liberal reformers and establishing the current regime in Iran. It's not always easy to tell at what stage of the revolution, in what act, we are appearing right now. It's not clear, I don't believe, in Egypt. It's not clear in Syria. And we need to make wise choices, but we need to do so with a certain sense of humility about our ability to understand exactly where we are. The United States, if you look at the 20th century as a whole, has made, on balance, remarkably fine choices. We won 3 world wars in the 20th century, 2 hot, 1 cold. One against an authoritarian power, the German Empire of 1914, 1918. In World War II, 3 totalitarian, secular totalitarian powers. And in the Cold War, yet another secular totalitarian power. And we've gotten to be pretty good at dealing with secular totalitarians and dictators. We make mistakes, but we're used to doing that. Our problem right now is that this new totalitarian movement that we must deal with is, on the whole, not exclusively, but on the whole, rooted in one of the world's great religions. We don't do political correctness here at FDD. So let me be candid. Islamism and the totalitarian movements, the Wahhabis, the Salafis, and the Muslim Brotherhood that grow out of Islam are our enemies. Islam is not our enemy. I knew slightly, not well, had dinner 3 times with the late marvelous man Abdul Rahman Wahid, Gus Dur, former president of Indonesia. After Gus stepped down as president, he became the founder of an organization called Lib for All, Liberty for All, recruited Indonesia's leading young rock star, and set up a series of concerts and rock concerts in soccer stadiums, free, all over Indonesia. He would go to each one, introduce the rock star. The rock star would sing his own songs. All the kids who were there would sing along with him, and then he would teach them a couple of songs about religious liberty. And then the former president of the country would come out and speak for about 5 minutes about how important religious liberty was. That, however, is sadly not the branch of Islam with which we are today contending with its offshoot, Islamism. We are contending with a movement which Nina Shea and I saw very clearly when we were at Freedom House, when a group of American Muslims came in to see us. Nina was and still heads the Institute for Religious Freedom. They came to see us because they had educational materials in their mosque in Northern Virginia, which they gave us a copy of, that they had put together. And they said, we don't think you'll see any problem with these materials, and we think they're fine materials, teaching Islam to young Muslims. But they said, again this year, the Saudis showed up, imams with their diplomatic passports, and they came to our mosque just as they go to mosques all over the United States, and they threw away our materials and replaced them with their own. And here is what they left. Here is our translation. Have them translated yourself, and go ahead and publish them if you want, or do whatever you want with them. We had them translated and read. I still remember the 8th grade instruction materials. They went through in some detail the 3 acceptable ways to kill a homosexual. You may throw him from a high place, you may stone him to death, or you may burn him alive. But nothing so quick and humane as, say, decapitation. That is the movement we are dealing with. And that puts a rather different cast on the problems we are facing in this war of the 21st century, whatever you choose to call it. It is as ridiculous to ignore the religious roots of Islamist terrorism as to ignore the role of the Catholic Church in the Spanish Inquisition, or the role of religion in the conflict in Northern Ireland, or the Shinto beliefs of kamikazes and their willingness to die for a divine emperor, and so on. We have a situation in which we have to deal with this offshoot of one of the world's great religions and deal with it humanely and sensitively, but thoroughly, powerfully, and effectively. This is as hard a job as the United States has ever had, short of the secession of the states of the Confederacy. The national security of the country and of the West depends upon our doing this right. Lawrence Wright, in The Looming Tower, says that with between 1% and 2% of the world's Muslims, the Saudis control approximately 90% of the world's Islamic institutions, including particularly mosques and schools. That means we have a very large and difficult task ahead of us. Why such power? It takes only one three-letter word to describe that: oil. When oil hits $135 a barrel, and it's already been above that in the summer of '08, approximately half the wealth in the world is in the hands of the 12 nations of OPEC. We have a big problem presented to us. But one thing to remember: marvelous American poet Carl Sandburg once wrote a lengthy poem that is one of the best things I think has ever been produced in American literature. The poem's called "The People Yes." And the last line is, "This old anvil laughs at many broken hammers." Thank you.